In late 2021, Geoffrey and Victor Max collaborated on a fictional retelling of their so-called star-crossed romance. Every character, event, name, and likeness presented in this audio has been fully fictionalized, and any resemblance to real individuals, whether intentional, implied, or coincidental, is purely accidental. This narrative is performed by Victor Max, who also contributed creatively to its development.
Grubbible presents A Stitched Heart.
Chapter 1. The Move to Hornsby. Kevin Chan, 13, stepped off the Transdev bus in Hornsby, the damp air seeping into his bones. Hornsby was a shroud of fog and fir trees, littered with saggy fences and mossy roofs. Dim streetlights barely lit the way. Kevin felt like he'd left the TARDIS and entered a mirror universe. East Lakes, a rundown suburb with higher aspirations than it deserved, with its blistering heat, streets littered with abandoned taxis, and a living patchwork of trolley-thieving immigrants faded into the rearview of Kevin's memory, he'd buried and repressed the short-lived glow of television lights. Hey Dad, the sitcom that was supposed to make Kevin a star, a household name, was cancelled after one season and a dark scandal that had left a big black mark on Kevin's soul. All he had to show for it was reruns and some residuals, the odd glimmer of recognition in the eyes of strangers at the local Westfield East Gardens, and the thought of the pain the incident had caused to his career and the shame it caused to his family. Kevin's mother, Young Yu Huan, and his father, Bruce, both agreed that Hornsby would be a fresh start, a prestigious acting and writing academy that might salvage the promise of their prodigy son. But Kevin was running from himself, from the stirring sparked by the trickle of sweat running down a man's wrinkled and leathery brow, or the gentle sway of an elderly man's body tightly bound in a pink polo. Instead of a dormitory his parents, ever convinced independence would season him, had rented a dingy apartment above a bait shop. The place reeked of fish and mildew, and the floor creaked like it regretted every step. Kevin unpacked his duffel, his few possessions, including a tattered copy of Lolita, its pages worn from furtive readings. He knew what the book meant, its story mirroring his own desire. Hornsby was supposed to be a reset, but Kevin felt like he was teetering on a precipice. He resisted the temptation to take out the book and finger it in the wee hours of the witching hour. He had an early start tomorrow. Chapter 2. Monologue of the Misassembled. Kevin Chan pushed open the creaking door of the Hornsby Institute of Dramatic Assemblage, his stomach knotted with nerves and something sharper he couldn't name. The morning mist clung to his jacket, dampening the worn flannel as he stepped into the fluorescent lit hallway. It was his first day, a last-ditch effort to salvage his dreams after fucking up again and again and again. Hornsby, with its fog and secrets, was supposed to be a fresh start, but the weight of Lolita, tucked into his backpack, felt like a confession he wasn't ready to make. The dog-eared books whispered of desires he buried older men, forbidden love, the kind of longing that made his pulse race when he noticed the pearly grin of misfit dentures or the glimmer of cataracts shimmering in snowy mythical eyes.
The classroom was a cramped space, its walls lined with faded posters of Shakespeare and Stanislavski. A dozen students, a mix of eager locals and washed-up dreamers like Kevin, shuffled in their seats, their murmurs fading as the door swung open. In walked Geoffrey Leonard, the acclaimed writer, advocate, teacher, a figure whispered about in local Hornsby's coffee shops and bars. 68 years old, his body was a grotesque tapestry of stitches and scars, as if sewn together by a careless tailor.
Kevin thought Geoffrey looked like a man who'd somehow left half of himself in Vietnam and been stitched back together in the dark. He'd never seen a veteran who looked this frightful. His flabby bicep jiggled under a tight red sweater, and the loose skin of his neck flap quivered as he moved. Yet his mismatched eyes, one blue, one green, burned with a vitality that silenced the room. Kevin's breath caught, his body tensing as Geoffrey's presence filled the space like a storm. Geoffrey stood at the front, his hulking frame dwarfing the podium. He surveyed the class, his gaze lingering on Kevin for a moment too long, sending a shiver down his spine.
I am Geoffrey Leonard,
He began, his voice a gravelly rumble, like stones tumbling in a riverbed.
First and foremost, I am an honest man. I've got honest beliefs. I am true to myself, true to everybody else, and I am true to God. If you write a story without those core elements, true to your soul, to others, to something bigger, you're wasting your own damn time. Stories aren't just words. They're blood, bone, and the ache you carry in your chest.
The class leaned forward, hanging on Jeff's every word. Kevin's heart thudded. He'd read everything about his new teacher, but seeing the monstrous man in the flesh was incredible. Geoffrey's intensity stirring something deep, something he'd tried to bury in the vast wasteland of East Lakes. Geoffrey paced, his scarred limbs moving with surprising grace.
Let me show you what I mean.
he said, his voice dropping to a low, theatrical growl. He launched into a dramatic monologue, his stitched hands gesturing wildly, his eyes blazing with emotion.
A wretched heart bound by chains unseen. Dost thou weep for love unclaimed?
He intoned, his voice rising and falling like a tempest.
In shadows deep where none dare tread, I carve my name in blood and dread.
The words were melodramatic, almost absurd, yet Geoffrey's delivery was raw, visceral, his flabby bicep trembling as he clutched an imaginary dagger. The class was spellbound, Kevin most of all, his mouth dry, his body tense with a mix of awe and something darker, more primal. The monologue built to a crescendo, Geoffrey's voice booming, then falling to a whisper as he finished.
And so I fall, unmade, undone, a soul adrift, forever shunned.
The hulking figure gently crumpled into himself. A hushed silence filled the room before the students erupted in applause, students clapping with wide-eyed fervour. But Geoffrey raised a hand, silencing them.
There is only one way to not be shithouse,
He said, his lips curling into a wry smile. A few students laughed nervously, unsure of where Geoffrey was going with this.
You must not just feel it. You must say to yourself, I'm not sorry for what I did. I am not. Because the thing you must do is to live the words. To produce real, tangible drama, you mustn't just write it, you must live it. Feel it in your guts, your bones, your blood. Anything less is a lie.
Kevin's pulse raced, Geoffrey's words slicing through him. He didn't know what it was, but he wanted to live it, to feel it. The weight of Lolita in his backpack suddenly felt heavier. It reminded him of the desires he'd been taught to fear. Geoffrey had the class break into small groups for an exercise in writing. Kevin lingered, drawn to Geoffrey like a moth to a flame. He approached the older man, who was frantically scribbling notes on the board.
Mr. Leonard,
Kevin started, his voice barely above a whisper.
your monologue, it was incredible. But how do you choose what to write about? Where do you start?
Geoffrey froze solid.
He turned with an uneasy, half-fightful motion towards Kevin, a look of pain in his face before he suddenly smiled.
Ha! I turned my life into words on the page.
Geoffrey looked up, his mismatched eyes locking onto Kevin's. For a moment, the air between them crackled, heavy with unspoken tension.
And my words, they're about all sorts of things, boy.
He said, waving a scarred hand, his tone whimsical yet weighted with meaning.
Love, death, the spaces in between.
Kevin clutched his backpack tightly and simply nodded. Geoffrey gave Kevin a smile before returning to the chalkboard. Kevin felt exposed, as though this monstrous man had peered into Kevin's very soul. His cheeks burned. Something dangerous had planted in that very moment, and Kevin returned to his group to discuss new scenes with strangers. He turned one more time to look at Geoffrey, who stood frozen, eyeing off the young boy. Kevin gulped.
Am I suggesting you subscribe? Well, yes.
Come on, boys, where are you?